Big news in the association here today. Good news, maybe bad news, indifferent. We'll see what you guys think about this on just a 5-game slate here today in the association. But we do have some interesting matchups here and an awful lot of movement here that we've got to cover today. So welcome into the afternoon update here on Wagertalk TV as we welcome in Double R1L Steve Merrill in the house, as is the one and only, the pen in the house here, Mr. Ralph Michaels, ready to roll here on this Thursday here, guys. And obviously the big news has to do with the New York Knicks, knowing that, in fact, Julius Randle will not be coming back anytime soon here. Done for the season, going to go under the knife. Knicks have a pretty interesting game at home against the Kings tonight. Whether that motivates them or not to get it done, well, that remains to be seen, but we'll start with this game and just send a reminder out to those of you that are watching us live right now. Big shout out. Don't forget to go ahead and hit that thumbs up and hit the subscribe button if you haven't had a chance to yet. And those that are watching on the replay, don't forget we've got best bets in the description from guys like Steve Merrill as well as Brian Power, who have gone ahead and given us a best bet or two up on the site. So make sure you check those out. As Merrill, what do we do with the Knicks here? 3.5. It hasn't really moved. 213. We've seen that total drop here a little bit, but it's not like he's been around lately anyway. So does it motivate the Knicks? Do they rally around this, or did you like them one way or the other in this spot?
You know how I feel about Julius Randle, Joe. So in my opinion, it lowers their future odds. I think they have a better chance of winning the title now than having to try to work him back into the lineup at the last moment. He had one of the worst playoffs for a superstar a few years ago when they played the Hawks and lost to Trae Young and company. And I've said it numerous times, I think Julius Randle is one of the more overrated quote-unquote superstars in the NBA, whereas Jalen Brunson on the Knicks is the most underrated superstar in the NBA. So it doesn't change anything for me. They've learned to play without him, and not having to mix him back into the lineup as the postseason approaches might be a positive. Now, what has changed for the Knicks, though, is their defense. They had that nice run for a couple months after the 2-for-1 swap with Toronto. And by the way, I think they got rid of 2 guys for 1 because they are trying to open up space to get another superstar next year. So shutting Randle down kind of makes sense. Maybe he'll be part of that package now if they can get him healthy and get him out of town. They played really well, and then they went into that rut in February and turned things back on defensively in early March. In fact, they held 5 straight opponents the first couple of weeks of March there to below 40.5% shooting. But they have since now allowed each of their last 8 opponents, 7 of their last 8 opponents, to shoot mid-40s, even at low 50s. So the defense is starting to slip. And not a surprise, during that span, the Knicks are now 7-1 over their last 8 games. So the defense has not quite been there. A 10-point loss at Miami. Also lost to OKC by just 1, but they were a dog in both of those games. So this is a winnable bounce-back spot. Just don't know if I can trust that defense. The problem is Sacramento's offense has gone ice cold. This has usually been one of the better offensive teams the last couple years. Sacramento has now shot below average in 6 of their last 7 games. So it might be a favorable matchup for the Knicks to get back on track tonight. And the line has not moved. It opened 3.5. It's still 3.5, but I would lean New York.
All right, so you'll lean New York in this one here. How about for you, Ralph? What have you seen from these 2 teams recently? Because it certainly feels like Mike Brown has been screaming and yelling defense since he got there, but they've actually been playing some as of late here. Kind of feel like there's some urgency with Sacramento. Is it enough to you to look that way here tonight?
Well, you know, Joe, the injury system when you lose a star player is not quite in effect here, because I think Julius Randle's last game was January 25th. So he's been gone for a long time. I actually agree with Steve that the backups now know that if they make the playoffs and get in that run, that they will be part of this run. You look at Sacramento, you know, they went to Washington and they lost. Then they went to Orlando and won. They hosted Philly, Dallas, Utah, and the Clippers. So they were home for 5 games. Tough road trip here, coming to New York, having Boston on deck tomorrow. I do agree that I actually like the under here. New York had a couple horrible games defensively when they lost to San Antonio and lost outright to Oklahoma City. They did cover. They allowed 54% in each of these games. And while they held Miami to 48.6%, not a great performance as well. I look at Sacramento the last couple games. Am I impressed with 41% against Utah? Not really. I am impressed at home that they held the Clippers to 40.8%. So I do lean Sacramento in this game.
All right, so you're leaning Sacramento in this one here, guys, as we take a look at the latest injury report. Malik Monk out, Huerta still out. We knew that from Sacramento. Mitchell Robinson, Josh Hart also still questionable right now. So it'll be interesting to see if Robinson goes here. I didn't think he was going to go against the Heat the other night, but he did. But we'll see what's going on there. They can ill afford, I guess, a whole lot more injuries here at this point, but still holding strong at 3.5 here. Some of the other interesting news coming out today is Kawhi Leonard. Merrill. We've been trying to tell people here that Kawhi Leonard, if healthy, makes the Clippers, I don't care about anything else, makes them pretty interesting. Without Kawhi Leonard, getting what, 4.5 as this thing has slowly been creeping up now. I don't see anything. I mean, Jamal Murray is questionable. We'll have to see what happens there. But this was 3.5 this morning. It's now 4. Denver on the road as a favorite, and the total from 218.5 up to 221.5. Big move here on the total as well, Merrill. But no Kawhi Leonard. What do you do with this?
You know, if you check the Wagertalk Live odds screen, you'll see that the opening line was 3.5 for this game, and now it's up to 4. But if you check you can click a box that says openers, and DraftKings is usually the first to the market. It's a very raw number. I'm not saying it's necessarily the right number, but before that was necessarily known, it was 1 yesterday. So this is about a 2 to 3 point line move because Leonard is out, even though the opener might not show that for most books because they didn't put it up till after that information was known. As is often the case, if you blindly play the team shorthanded, you've made money. But the Clippers, I don't know if they fit that scenario because they have 3 or 4 Hall of Fame caliber players. So just because one of them is out doesn't mean they're really shorthanded. It's ironic that we transitioned to this game after the Knicks because the other most overrated superstar in the NBA, in my opinion, is James Harden. And I've talked about this for weeks now. I said, look to fade the Clippers. They had that little nice run, December, January, the best record in the league for a couple months. After they had a little slow start with Harden, they went on that monster run for about 2 months. But now the the Harden honeymoon factor, is kicking in, and it's over. He's a team I look to fade. With that said, though, they are playing more competitive basketball. They've won 5 of their last 8, including 3 of their last 4. Just finished a 4-game road trip, which was successful, going 3-1 straight up. Beat Philly on the road as a 6.5-point favorite, didn't cover. Did beat Orlando. That was a solid win. And then beat a terrible Charlotte team, didn't cover. And then got blown out by 14 at Sacramento. So they weren't exactly playing great basketball, especially against quality opponents. Just like UConn, I'm not looking to fade the best team in the NBA, the Nuggets, unless we have a reason. And the fact that this is a spotlight national TV game on the road, it's a single road game. They just played 5 straight at home. They've got Atlanta at home on deck, so no look ahead towards Saturday. I'm not looking to fade the Nuggets in a focused spotlight in a short number like this.
It's a tough game here, Ralph, because I know you had this game circled here for a possible best bet. But what, Kawhi Leonard bother you that he's out and the number is still creeping up, or were you thinking Denver the whole time anyway?
I was thinking Denver, and it's funny, Steve, whenever you or I on our show, I tend to bring this situation up. You have one team in the Clippers who were on a 4-game road trip. They lost the last game, and now they're a home dog. Going to the database since 2017, those teams are 41% against the spread. Does it make sense? Absolutely. You're gone for a week or a week and a half. You get back home. You pay your bills. You play with your kids. You get situated. You're out of a routine. When you're on the road, you have hotel, team meals, team meetings, practice, go play game, repeat. But when you look at teams that have been at home and are now an away favorite, That situation is a 56% play. So you have a positive for Denver being an away favorite after being at home. You have a negative for the Clippers returning home as a dog after a long road trip. When I look at the Clippers, folks, they are two different teams. When they are playing a team with the winning record, since I'm looking at the date, since February 4th, they are 3-12 straight up. They are 2-13 against the spread. And listen to this. In the 8 home games, their last 8 home games, which Leonard played against a team with a winning record, not only have they gone 0-8, they were a favorite in 7 of those games. They've been upset 7 straight times against teams with a winning record. And while you said Murray was questionable, Murray's missed the last 6 games. He has actually practiced the last 2 practices with absolutely no discomfort. So you very well may see him tonight. As far as Leonard's concerned, he felt some tightness in the Charlotte game a couple games ago. They sent him back to LA to get a look. And even this morning, Tyrone Lue said, well, we hope we have him for Denver. So his scratch is something that the team really wasn't planning on or occurred when they flew home from the road trip and got home. They thought perhaps he would play. So I see this all Denver in this situation. I didn't get to the window with this play. It may be a very late entry for me, though, because the more and more I talk about Denver, this was my best bet for the show and the game that's closest to being an all-access client release.
All right. Liking that. Best bet there. Denver Nuggets is who Ralph is looking at here tonight in that one against the Clippers here. Tough to trust the Clippers without a Kawhi Leonard, but we'll see if the guys can step up here tonight. There's only 5 games on the board here, and a big shout out to those of you joining us live here on whether it be Instagram here. I see 50 Nikki bands in the house telling us, do not trust the Knicks under any circumstances. I don't argue with that. He does like Sacramento, though, and thinks that maybe Keegan Murray stepping up is going to be the key to Sacramento's success moving forward. I can't argue with him there. And also, we've got a couple of other interesting games here. One of them, well, down here in Miami, in fact, where the Heat are going to be hosting these 76ers. I saw this as high as 3 this morning. I'm seeing 2.5s now. The total is starting to creep down a little bit, 209, 208 and a half here. And as far as the injuries go, this is the cleanest I've seen a Miami injury report in a long time. Tyler Hero, they're still hoping we'll get there by the time the postseason comes. But as far as Philly goes, Embiid, Mo Bamba, Tyrese Maxey, Tobias Harris is out, so we still have 3 question marks. Listen, this is a battle here for right around that 6th seed, and Philadelphia needs to win some games. But I don't know, man. I mean, they got away with it with Embiid against in their last game there, Merrill, the other night when nobody knew if he was going to play or not play. Everyone thought he wasn't going to play, but then all of a sudden, shocker, last minute, he's playing here. You worry about doing that with Philadelphia in this game here. What are you thinking on what is a 2.5 point game right now for Miami?
Yeah, let's put this in perspective. I did Wagertalk today on Tuesday about 12:30 Eastern, 12:15 Eastern, and Embiid was listed as out on the injury report on Tuesday. Now, I mean, I'm a numbers guy. Out usually means 0% chance you're playing. And they do update that at 9, 10, 11 in the morning. So it's not like that was the overnight injury report. And they were a 5.5 point dog. As I was doing it live with Teddy Covers, I don't think the Prez noticed, but Teddy noticed that the line was starting to move and it dropped from 5.5 down to 2.5. So we knew something might be up. And then Philly closed like -3. So it was like an 8.5 point line move from a guy that was listed as out 7 hours before the game. He is now listed as questionable tonight. So that means absolutely nothing. But Maxey is also questionable after not playing Tuesday. Tobias Harris is questionable. So a lot of uncertainty for the Sixers. And I just get a feeling that they might take it easy tonight, especially since they just had that big home win against OKC, who, by the way, was in a position to be the number 1 seed in the West. But they were playing with SGA. They were shorthanded as well. Miami Heat, meanwhile, still have plenty to play for, and Jimmy Butler is listed as probable, so he should go tonight. And he did not play in the loss back in March. Neither did Embiid, of course, but Maxey had 30 points in that game. Don't know if he's going to go this evening. He's missed the last 2 games for the Sixers. And yes, they need to try to get out of that 7th or 8th spot so they get into the playoffs, but it's going to be a tough road to get up to number 6. And I think they would rather keep everybody healthy, get everybody healthy, try to win that 7-8 game, get into the postseason and do some damage. So doesn't look like a great spot for Philly tonight. I would lean towards the Miami Heat, and it's a pretty short price. It was 2.5, 3 when I did a standalone video on this a couple hours ago. Now it's down to 2.5, even some 2s starting the show. But I think Miami's the right side. I would expect Embiid to go, but wouldn't be surprised if he was somewhat limited, especially if they get behind in the second half.
I agree. You got to think they're all going here if you're the Sixers. Now, how long they play, Ralph, is a totally different ball game here. I thought the number crashed from a total perspective in their last game. I thought it was ridiculous against the Knicks. It made it all the way down to about 205.5, 206. And then, of course, it just went over there with the Knicks only scoring 99. With Embiid back, you got to think the tempo is going to slow down here a little bit. But with all the three-point shooting here for Miami, how do you approach the total as well in this one?
Well, I do lean under. And again, you can't look at one game sample size. But, you look at what Embiid did. When Philadelphia went to Cleveland 3 games ago, they allowed the Cavs to shoot 55%. They then went to Toronto. Okay, they let the Raptors shoot 52.2%. What happens when you host OKC? You hold OKC to 42.5%. You look at Miami's last 5 games. They did have one poor game against Golden State where they allowed over 50%. Their other 4 games, 42%, 40%, 45.5%, and 46.1%. So I do think that I lean with the under in this game. Certainly not a strong opinion. The interesting thing in this game is Philly has no look ahead to Miami because you go to Memphis and then you play back-to-back Memphis, San Antonio, but you have a day off. On the flip side, Miami goes to Houston tomorrow and then Indiana and then Atlanta. So they play 3 straight road games before closing the season at home, playing Dallas and then the Raptors in back-to-back games at home. And I just can tell you, I hate you. Your last 2 games of the season are against the same foe at home in that situation. But I regress. I do lean the under. I was surprised that Embiid went from where he was to actually playing 29 minutes. I mean, Harris played 35, Obrey played 37, and then Payne played 30, and Embiid played 29, and Lowry played 28. So he basically held his own, playing the own. He was 6 of 14, shooting 0 of 3 from 3, and 12 and 12 of the free throws. But I think, with the Miami situation, we're not sure what's with Butler. One story says he's playing, one story says he's not. But I think you play Embiid here. You want to set the tempo against someone that you eventually may see in the playoffs. Lean Philadelphia, lean the under.
I think I think he's actually playing with Embiid's girlfriend. No, maybe that's wrong team. So let me ask you here, Steve. Well, you never know with good old Jimmy. Let me ask you, Merrill. We got a question from Josh in the YouTube Shorts chat room here. Wants to just follow up with you on your lean to Miami. He says they haven't really beaten anyone there the last 5 games, and at home they haven't exactly been the best this year. But they also haven't been this healthy in a while, and they did just beat the Knicks, so it wasn't like they haven't beaten anybody here. But why the lean? Why towards Miami here? You got to think Jimmy's going to go, I think, if you're going to lean that way, right?
Yes, he's listed as probable, so I expect him to be in the lineup. If not, then all bets off. So it wouldn't hurt to probably wait until 6:30 Eastern or so and see what the shoot-around looks like. I do think Embiid might give it a go. But as Ralph said, he was 12 for 12 from the free throw line. He got half his points from free throws. So he wasn't exactly dominating down low and scoring at will. And I think there could be a little bit of a hangover effect after that first game back. I think we've talked about it, Joe. I do think it's going to take a little while to work him back in the lineup. And I'm not going to overlook the fact they beat the Thunder, but they were without their best player. And that's, by the way, at 12:15 Eastern. The reason that line went from 5.5 to 2.5, I think, was more that it didn't look like SGA was coming back. The Embiid information wasn't known until a little bit later. So there was some other metrics going on there. Sixers still have not been a great team the last few months. They still might not have Maxey, who's missed the last 2 games. And yes, the Heat have been mediocre this year, but as Teddy Covers and I and you had always talked about, they're a terrible big favorite. So what that tells me is they don't get up for games that don't matter. This game matters because Miami just moved past Atlanta, winning 3 straight. They're now in the number 6 spot. And we could talk as much as we want about seeding and home court advantage don't matter. Number 6 is the most critical seed in the NBA playoffs because you don't have to win a game to make the playoffs. You're in. If you're 7 or 8, you have to win that game. If you lose, then you got to beat the 9-10 winner. So big difference between being 7th and 6th. And the Heat are in that spot right now. And a win tonight could really pull them ahead of the Sixers and give them a little bit more cushion over Indiana as well. That's why I think Butler goes. I think it's a critical game for Miami.
Yeah, they've done this before. We've seen this. Ralph, I saw you waving your pen at me. Did you have something to add here?
I did, Joe. I went to the database looking at Miami at home against teams with a winning record. Now, this is a short line, so you can't really put this, but just to put it in perspective, moving forward for the rest of the season, at home against teams with a winning record, they're 8-2 against the spread as a favorite. They're 1-9 ATS as a dog. So a very clear divide when Miami's at home against good teams.
Yeah, no doubt with that there. I hope that clarified it for you there, Josh, as we send a big shout out to Big Daddy in the house, Have in the house here. Jeremy D looking for a That's My Dog. We might have one for you here in just a minute. And I do want to mention, by the way, the chat room yesterday, Merrill, if you recall, the Contrarian Gods called live while we were on the air yesterday. And they dropped in the Brooklyn Nets, and the entire chat room, I couldn't, it was horrible how they just did not agree with it and laughed the entire show as the Contrarian Gods opted to go with the Nets. And I did not hear a peep from them so far right now with that. Nope, still don't see any Contrarian God love there as they all faded it last night, but yet the Nets got it done here. I got to tend to think that Atlanta getting how many tonight, Merrill? Now, what's the latest number on this one? 11.5, I think, against Dallas.
Some 12s, Joe. Some 12s, 3 12s now on the Wagertalk screen, yeah.
Yeah, so the Contrarian Gods just texted us and said, yeah, they're going to follow up the Nets, and they are certainly going to look at Atlanta in this one. Ralph, what do you think? 12, a little out of control here for you?
It is. That is a little bit high for me. I am going to the database and I am looking at end of the season big favorites. So in the last 10 games of the season, I can tell you that home favorites of 12 or more in the last 10 games of the season are 50.7%. So I'm not sharing anything wild with you, but I am just letting you know that when a team is fading down the stretch, there are situations where you do look to fade them, and I'm not afraid to do that. But I look at the Dallas Mavericks, and we've seen a very good defense. Last 5 games, they're holding foes to under 43% collectively. They've shot 50% every other game. And since the 3rd of March, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of those games, they've topped 50% shooting. But I cannot back Dallas because listen to this run. You go to Utah, play in the altitude. You play at Sacramento, no rest. You play at Sacramento for a second straight game. You go to Houston, you beat them, your in-state rival that now is actually playing for the playoffs. And then you go to Golden State. Now you return home and you have Golden State on deck tomorrow and Houston at home. In that scheduling spot, if Marco were here, that would be a 3-foot-long cheesesteak sandwich spot for the Dallas Mavericks.
Don't like it. I'm with you here. I mean, what are you thinking there, Merrill, here? Contrarian Gods on the Nets. And I thought it was dead in the water because Brian Power agreed with him. I'm like, well, this is not going to work. This is going to be awful. But it turns out it did come through here in Atlanta. And if I'm not mistaken, they played, it was like a crazy overtime game, I think, that landed in the 140s. This feels like a horrifically big number to be laying a team against Atlanta, who, dare I say it again, they're better, somewhat different without Trae Young here. It's kind of a different Hawks team here. Do you think it's blowout city, or you think there's any value taking those 12 points?
First of all, I'm starving now. Ralph said 3-foot-long cheesesteak. That's all I can think about. I think you asked a question about an NBA game. That's all I'm thinking about now is cheesesteak. But you're kind of right about the 140s. Both teams got over 140 in the earlier meeting this year. That was back on January 26th. 291 points in regulation. There wasn't even an overtime. 148, 103, 143. Dallas won as a 2-point dog, actually, at Atlanta. And let's dig into that box score. Oh, look, somebody had 73 points. You might have heard him before. Doncic. It was a career high and a franchise high. He put up 73 against Atlanta on that game. Trae Young had 30. He, of course, is not in the lineup, as you mentioned. But you're right, Joe. They actually have been better the last couple months without Trae Young. They were, keep in mind, on a record pace to have the worst point spread record ever in the NBA. In fact, the first couple months, I think it was the worst point spread record ever. On the season, they're still 28 and 48, the Atlanta Hawks against the spread, 20 games below 500. But don't look now. They've covered 5 of their last 7. They've actually had a profitable record for the last month and a half against the spread. So we have started to get value with Atlanta. And we're getting a 12.5-point dog tonight that is 5-1 straight up their last 6 games. Now, granted, they were favored in some of those, but 2 of those wins came as a double-digit dog outright against the Boston Celtics. The only loss actually was by only 9 against Milwaukee. So I don't like fading Dallas in a focused spot because they are coming off that loss to Golden State by 4 points. And this is a Mavericks team that had gone, I believe, 11-1 straight up and against the spread their previous 12. But still, I see Dallas winning this game, but I think Atlanta probably is the point spread play as they can keep it close.
Yeah, I agree. Ralph, you got something to add in this one?
I do, Joe. The Atlanta Hawks have been a dog of 9.5 or more 4 times this year. 3 times against the Celtics, once against the Clippers. They're a perfect 4-0 ATS, and they pulled an upset as a 9.5-point dog, as a 10.5-point dog, and as a 16-point dog.
So the contrarian gods might be onto something here tonight, guys. So get ready for it. As the Hawks opening up at Dallas, 7:30 Eastern time tip there. That means we only got one other game here on the board. We'll break it down for you. Nothing has been happening in the market, which worries me here a little bit when it comes to the Houston Rockets taking on the Golden State Warriors. We know Kuminga is questionable, but he's been out for the last couple of games. Nothing new for the Rockets on the injury report. I saw it at 4 this morning. It's still 4. I saw it at 2:28. It's still at 2:28. So the lack of movement here, Merrill, worries me here a little bit. I mean, if Kuminga's goes, okay. I mean, this is a pretty big game here. Houston at home, catching points. And that feels like a possible dog situation here tonight, doesn't it?
Well, we'll find out if the Rockets are for real. You know, the Rockets are making a push to make the postseason. They're now currently the 11th team for a 10-man field to get into that play-in round. But this is a playoff game. In fact, it's most likely an elimination game for Houston. It's a must-win. And the reason I say that is they have 7 games remaining, I believe. Golden State has 8. They're currently 3 games behind Golden State for that 10th spot to get into the play-in round. So if they were to lose tonight, they're going to pretty much be done. Whether they can step up in this role, we'll find out. It's been a very impressive run that they've been on the last couple months, as profitable as any team in the NBA against the spread. Also, a lot of straight-up dog wins. If Golden State is really the class like they still think they are, they should win this game, though. So I just don't know if Houston is quite ready for primetime players. You know, this team has made a monster run the last couple of weeks, the last month or so, and they're still 3 games out of a playoff spot to kind of put it in perspective. I don't want to say they're NC State-ish, but they're a little NC State-ish, and I think Golden State might be more like Purdue in this game.
Oh, all right. He's not buying Miami, not buying the Rockets here, Ralph. I'm going to be interested to hear what you got to say. Road favorite here. Golden State has been better on the road than they have been at home this year, ironically enough. But do you trust them to lay the 4 here tonight in Houston?
I do, Joe. And in fact, right before the show, I tweeted out, if you look at the year-to-date ATS stats at home, the Houston Rockets, the number one team in the NBA. You look at the best ATS team on the road, the Golden State Warriors. Now, the Rockets, as a favorite, have gone 13-2-1 as a favorite of 3 or more at home. But when they're a dog, or a small favorite of 1 or 2 points, they're only 7-7 their last 14 games. The Warriors, by the way, on the road, 13-4 against the spread. 2 of those losses were as a dog of 8 points or more to Boston and Dallas. So you take out the games as a huge dog, they're 13-2 against the spread. And as a away favorite or a very small dog, they're 12-1 the last 13 games. But to me, we've seen what the Rockets have done lately. You got by Utah. You were an 8-point favorite at Utah. You win by 1. Why? Because you have immense pressure to win. You host Dallas. You get blown out by 18. You go to Minnesota. You push the spread. You lose by 7. But the offense that had 4 straight games of 50% plus through the 23rd of April, 39%, 48%, 39%, 42%, 45%, and for the first time since the beginning of March, they allowed 50% to an opponent shooting, and they've done that in back-to-back games, allowing Dallas 51.6 and Minnesota 53.2. But to me, these are NBA players. And listen, we have Golden State, who's been there, who's done that, who knows they can lock up their spot by beating Houston. And you have a Houston team that was 22-60 last year. Those kids got to learn how to win late in the season. They've never done that as a group collectively. I think they continue to fade. I think Golden State puts the knee to their gut and knocks them out. Robert, my apologies in advance.
Wow, they just crapping all over your Rockets there, Robert. I hope you heard that, man. I'm shocked the mute button hasn't kicked in at this particular point here. Shout out to winning in Vegas. Dogs worth a few bucks here tonight on this card. It's actually one of the first cards that we've had in a while that you didn't have to sort through, teams getting 18 and 13.5 and 15. It's Atlanta is the only one that I see on the board here tonight. So it is only 5 games, but certainly some interesting numbers on the board here. Jay Price, by the way, talking about an under in this one, 228.5 here, Maryland, this Houston Golden State game. Listen, Golden State's been bringing the defense, and we know Houston certainly can do that as well at home here. I don't hate that look at 228.5 to the under. What do you think?
Well, like I said, this is basically a playoff game, and playoff games historically are a couple points lower scoring, a basket or 2 lower scoring than an average game. So in that case, you would lean under probably, and Golden State has gone under 4 of their last 5 during this current 5-game win streak. But as Ralph said, my concern, what would keep me off the total, is the fact that Houston's defense looks like it's slipping. They've given up 49% shooting or worse now in 3 of their last 4 games. They've actually gone over 8 of their last 10. So, once again, I lean Golden State here, so that probably somewhat correlates to the under, but I like the side more just because I think that Houston D is starting to slip.
Yeah, it's and don't forget fresh knowledge there in Instagram writing that don't forget Rockets were competitive first game, so should be able to keep close and stay within the number there. Ralph, is the database, what was the that first go around with Golden State and Houston?
I was looking up the Warriors on the road, guys, and just FYI, the Warriors on the road since January 15th, 5 overs, 15 unders, and those games have gone under by over 6 points per game. So if we look at the couple of games this year, Golden State was a 7-point favorite at Houston back on October 29th. It was 106-95 with a total of 223. So it went under by 20 plus points. When they played again in Golden State, the Warriors were an 8-point favorite. Houston did cover that game. The date was November 20th. There was 237 points scored. Golden State 121, Houston 116.
Yeah, and Joe, I was
there you
going to
go.
say
Go ahead.
that only meeting, I believe, was, like Ralph said, was back on November 20th, and Golden State was leading by 11 going into the fourth quarter and only won by 5, so failed to cover as a 7-point home favorite. I definitely wouldn't put much stock into that game, and especially since Golden State was pretty much in control, just kind of took their foot off the gas.
Trying to give those Rockets some love there, Robert, our producer. Just he's bleeding from his ears right now. Bleeding when I tell you here. All right. Also, we've got a big fan of yours in the YouTube Shorts chat room, Steve Merrill. He's calling you Coach Merrill. He's sending a big shout out to Coach Merrill. So that means it could be one of your players in the chat room here right now. And Cannon Dodd in the chat room, you got to let us know, is he a good coach? Is he not a good coach? We are dying to hear this.
I actually know a player called Cannon Dodd, and it is spring break, so Cannon obviously, and my son is not online playing Fortnite or whatever they play for 5 hours every day. So, Cannon, I'll say this to you if you're listening, and this is good advice for all fifth graders or the tallest kids in the league and think they're the point guard. Yes. You're not a point guard, Cannon. I love you. Oh. Get down low and dominate. He's heard me say that 1,000 times. Don't bring that ball up. Get it to the point guard.
You know what, Cannon Dodd? You don't even have to. I already know what the answer is, so don't you worry about it. That will be our poll question coming up tomorrow about Merrill's coaching ability here. By the way, the question we had up today with the ceiling for the Knicks without Julius Randle, this is amazingly close. I didn't see this here today. One and done. Win a playoff series or two, or the Eastern Conference Finals. 56-40 here. A lot of people think, obviously, 56. I think the Knicks are one and done here, Ralph. But I didn't see 40% thinking the Knicks are still good enough to win a series without him. Are you buying the Knicks here in the playoffs? Should we reconsider no Julius Randle and the Knicks here?
Well, we talk about defense in playoff, Joes, and I wasn't buying the Knicks last year until they kicked in the Cavs' teeth. So I will hold my reservations, because if you could play that type of defense in the playoffs, you can win some games. So while I really don't think they'll go far, they disproved me last time. So I will quietly sit and watch and see if they can do it again.
Love it. Shout out to Shelevite there also in the YouTube Shorts on a mobile phone watching us live. Merrill, sprinkling Rockets money line. If you're going to take the 4 at home, should we be sprinkling a little something here as well?
You know, Joe, it's funny when you're talking about the contrarian play. Some of the metrics I look at, the Rockets are a public dog tonight. I was going to mention that to you. And the more we're getting these comments, I'm starting to think the Rockets might be the contrarian. Well, I'm sorry, Golden State would be the contrarian play of the day.
Contrarian side, I mean,
unless Robert is on 5 devices there in the control center, there's everybody trying to find a reason to take the Rockets, saying, well, they only lost by 5 after being down by 11 at the end of the third quarter. Can they hang from November? I mean, look. None of these reasons make me worry. And no, I do not like the Rockets money line, because I don't like the Rockets to start with in this game. I don't even think they cover. So, yeah, I mean, look, I think if you like the Rockets, you probably play half money line, half point spread, because it's a small spread, right? Never take a team, because someone said earlier a minute ago, too, one of the other people trying to give a reason to take Houston is they can stay within the spread. It's 2 baskets. You're talking about 200 and some points being scored in this game. You don't want to make a bet because you think you can nail exactly that 2-basket margin that they're going to land in after 200 and some points are scored. So, yeah, you better think they can win this game outright if you're going to back them tonight.
So Merrill thinks there's a chance. That's what I heard there, Ralph. So, yeah, you go. What do you got? What do you got, Ralph?
You know what? I'm just going to say this. There are certain teams that do not show up on the road. Since the beginning of February, that is not Golden State. Since the end of October, they're 16-2 straight up on the road, and they've won 12 straight road games going back to the beginning of February. There's better spots to try to pick a team to lose to than a veteran team like Golden State that still has to win to get to the playoffs. They have nothing guaranteed to them. Those are not the teams I want to try to fade and look to play against.
Well, you got it here, guys. And don't forget, if you're watching this on replay, don't forget to check out below for the links of other best bets that we've got coming up here tonight. I think Ralph certainly was leaning Denver here against the Clippers tonight. Merrill, if you had to choose one of these games, which one would you go at? Oh, uh-oh. I think you got muted finally. You pissed Robin off long enough. No,
I was afraid one of my other players might climb through the window and say, take the Rockets. I'm all nervous here. I got my basketball players chiming in the chat, people telling everyone to take the Rockets. So I had to mute myself for safety reasons. But now I was saying I've got 2 strong NBA best bets tonight for my clients. So of the other three remaining games, I did do a free play video on the Heat Sixers. As long as Butler's a go, which I think he is, I'd probably lean Heat minus 2.5. And once again, 2 strong NBA best bets and a Final Four best bet. Each game is 25. We get all 3 for 29. So it's basically like a $2 Thursday. You get that second and third play for just $2 each. Steve Merrill, Wagertalk.com.
Yeah, links will be in the description, guys. You can check out those videos. Ralph, how about you? Locked and loaded over at Wagertalk.com.
Well, as I said, both games were actually very close to making it as plays, and I may have a late addition, but Golden State minus the points, Denver minus the points, both in my upper echelon, very top opinion. So next week, I'll be starting some baseball posts on my site, and make sure to tune in some PDFs. And, it might be April 4th, but you know what that means. March is back, and I'm starting to look at spring football already. So I'm excited to start working on college basketball and that to the mix as well. College football, I should say. Excuse me.
Can't believe we're at that point here, guys. But that'll do it. Again, contrarian gods taking those 12 points with Atlanta tonight on the road against the Dallas Mavericks here. And I wouldn't shy away from Miami in the first half on the money line, too, at this price, especially since Maxey / maybe Embiid or one is not going in this one. I think there's pretty good value with a motivated Miami team at home. I'll say that here, guys. And don't forget, visit Steve, visit Ralph, wagertalk.com. Make sure you smash that like button if you guys wouldn't mind, and make plans to come back and join us again tomorrow for another edition here of the afternoon update in the NBA. We got a few more games here tomorrow. Shout out to Big Daddy, Mr. Chin in the house, Have and company. Shout out to those of you who joined us in Instagram, as well as Steve Merrill's players hanging out there in YouTube Shorts. We certainly appreciate it. Guys, best of luck with your plays here tonight. Don't forget to check out those other best bets. We got the links are in the description. Go check them out, guys. We'll see you again tomorrow. Good luck.